Hi, I'm Dave Ketchen, back for another exciting episode of Tiger Bites. And today we have a long term friend of mine, David Martin. We've been working together since about 2014
That's correct.
on projects. Could you tell us your title, a little bit about your background?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. First off, really excited to be here. So my name is David Martin. I am an associate professor in the Horst Schulze School of Hospitality Management, which resides within the College of Human Sciences at Auburn University. So it's a pretty long business card with that title. So my background, I'm a three-time graduate from Auburn, which makes me a little bit different. That I'm the definition, I guess, of academic inbreeding, if you will. But I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. My parents were both college professors. My dad was a marketing professor. And I came to Auburn, did my undergrad in hotel restaurant management. And then I went and worked in the industry for many years, mainly in 4- and 5-star resort hotels. And then I came back to Auburn to do my master's degree. I was non-thesis. I had no plans of going into academia. I wanted to go into property development in a corporate office with a big hotel company.
Probably would have made a lot more money.
I would have made a lot more money. Maybe been through a couple more divorces as well, though, perhaps. But ended up, my professor at the time said, "Hey, I really want you to co-teach this class with me." And I said, "I don't want to teach a class. I'm not here for my thesis. I'm not doing a PhD. I have no need to develop that skill." And he said, "Well, listen, you're on assistantship, and I'm the one who cuts the checks for those. So I really think you should co-teach this class with me." And I kind of looked at him for a second and said, "You know what? That sounds like an amazing idea. Let me go ahead and do that." And ended up teaching a science of service quality class, which I ended up finding out that I really enjoyed. And I was able to bring a lot of my industry expertise to bear on that. And the students responded well to me. So I quickly changed to thesis option and ended up staying for my PhD. And then my first job in academia was in San Francisco. So I moved from Auburn, Alabama to San Francisco State University, which was a big change.
Sure.
But also an amazing learning opportunity for me because I had to completely rethink and redesign my approach to teaching classes. Very different demographics, very different background. Most of my students were older than me. Most of my students had more working experience than me in the hospitality industry. And so it was a very challenging time, but it was also an amazing time. And I really learned a lot. And then I got a phone call and said, "Hey, we have an opportunity at Auburn. We'd like you to apply." And I came back to Auburn in 2010. So it's great to be back home. And as I like to say, back in Auburn as an adult. It's been great being back in Auburn. And I've been really fortunate to have the opportunity to work on a lot of different projects, including the Brewing Sciences program with you and the rest of the team.
So you get back here in 2010, around 2014, we start working on the Brewing Science and Operations graduate certificate. How did you get involved in that originally?
Yeah, so I had a pretty strong background in both beer, wine, and spirits from my working days in hotels. And then I had done a lot of beverage education in San Francisco State. And then when I returned to Auburn, teaching the wine and spirits and beer classes. So it's been a passion of mine for a long time. It's something I've been really interested in. When you're teaching a wine class, especially in California, you literally have relatives of the Mondavi family sitting in there peppering you with questions. And my response was like, "Why are you taking this class from me in the first place? You have access to, a world of information that I'm never going to be able to get." It helps you prepare. But that conversation about the Brewing Sciences program started with Dr. O'Neill and Kurt and Bruce, and they asked me if I wanted to join in. They knew my background from teaching those. And I had previously also taught a facilities management class for hospitality. So there's a lot of crossover into one of the courses that they needed to be developed, which is the facilities management for brewers class.
Right. So Martin O'Neill, Bruce Smith, Kurt Bird, they're all part of a home brewing group
Correct.
at the time. I guess they probably still are.
I think so, yes.
And I guess they're probably just standing around one day enjoying their products, and they get the bright idea of, hey, maybe we should do a graduate certificate.
Yeah, I think that's how the story goes. So similar to you, I think I am not a home brewer, and I like to joke with them that you guys do it as for passion and to make really high quality beer. I do it so I can help people actually make money off of making high quality beer and be successful from a business standpoint. But it was a passion project for them, and then I think they realized though that they needed to bring in some expertise from an operational standpoint, from a business management standpoint with you. And so they approached me about that opportunity, and I was excited to do it. I was really thankful for the opportunity to do it. And being able to transition people from the home brewer mentality, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's great. But this is also a business, and we're talking about finance and management and HR and all the other things that go into running an actual business or owning an actual business.
Now, thinking back to when we were developing that program, 2014, 2015, Auburn Online really, for all intents and purposes, kind of didn't exist. I mean, there were basically one or two people assigned to develop online tools. And so we ended up hiring a company in Atlanta for an exorbitant amount of money, as I recall.
Crazy amount of money. Had to outsource it outside of the university to kind of get the quality of the filming and the other infrastructure built. We were also at that time using their online learning platform as well. Skooks, I think it was. That's right. I think I still get random emails. I can't unsubscribe for some reason, but so we did have to outsource that as opposed to what Auburn has now, which is amazing technology, amazing facilities, and amazing personnel. And I think that's the key, right? I mean, the technology and the facilities are one thing. It's all about the personnel and bringing that knowledge to bear to help faculty develop those online classes.
I'm curious about the status of your class. I mean, obviously, you've moved over to Canvas.
Yes.
Away from that old Skooks program, which didn't work terribly well. Have you done any other sort of upgrades to that original 2008 material?
Yeah.
2015.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm constantly updating material and working with Auburn Online to film different sessions or even bring in other industry professionals to have them come in to the studio and do things. So, for example, we had a gentleman come from Keg Credit, and he is the world's expert on kegs. So he does all the expert witness cases when kegs blow up. I mean, he is the guy. And he came in and filmed an absolutely amazing episode for the class about kegs and the dynamics of kegs, cleaning, sanitation, but also getting into rental versus ownership, the business options and models and how all of that works, financing those kegs. And so that's been a tremendous upgrade. So I'm always looking to enhance the content, change, because it's a dynamic world, right? And since we've started the program, we've seen brewing mature very, very quickly. When we first started, remember we had this conversation where craft brewing was experiencing 8% growth, 10% growth, 12% growth. And you and I had that conversation about, listen, this is amazing now, but this is not sustainable. And we are hopefully developing content that's going to allow our graduates to separate themselves. Because there was a time where if you just opened a craft brewery, even if your beer wasn't that good, as halfway decent, you could be successful. Now that is not the case. Your beer has to be really, really good just to get through the door of success. And then you have to do everything else right on the backside, from the business side, from hiring, inventory management, facilities management. And even now we're having companies invest in breweries, right? So that's a whole new thing that's really ramped up. Private equity, angel investors, whatever you want to call it. And that's other investment companies are looking at craft brewing now as a business model that they can invest in and get a healthy return on investment on. That's a totally different dynamic, too, than when we first started the program.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they have very high expectations in terms of things like efficiency and profitability, and they don't want to hear, hey, I want to try this super expensive hop.
That's right.
For an experimental brew that may be horrible.
My neighbor down the street's grandfather just delivered 40 pounds of that special honey. Can we incorporate that into a seasonal brew? And for better or for worse, right? I mean, we can have a conversation on either side of that of has craft brewing lost a little bit of the thing that makes it so unique in the first place? I don't think so. I don't think there's anything wrong with the industry maturing in that way. But I think home brewers that are transitioning into the business of being a craft brewer have to understand that and need to realize that the days of 12% growth, I think, are probably over. We're not seeing that type of growth anymore, and I don't think we're going to have some revolution where again we get back to 12% growth again.
It seems very unlikely.
Absolutely.
Sort of the golden era of explosive growth. I think
right.
is in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, that's right.
Are there any students? I think we've had about 10 cohorts, so that may be 80 students
Hmm.
roughly. Are there any students that stand out to you as, wow, I just really enjoyed interacting with that person and helping them advance their business idea?
Yeah, absolutely. And luckily, that person is back in Auburn now, Drew Kostick. So Drew is a graduate from our program. He'll tell you that he's a recovering lawyer, and so he made a big life change, moving from the legal field into brewing, which he was a home brewer first. He had a big
Right.
passion for it. And now he runs the New Realm Brewery here in Auburn for us. And what really stands out to me about Drew, again, he's coming from a non-science background, right? He is a legal scholar, but his attention to detail has always been impeccable, and that has really benefited him in terms of being the brewmaster for New Realm and other companies as well. And so he'll tell you that he has, and I'm quoting him now, the best job in the world,
Mm.
being in Auburn, working with faculty and alumni from the program to run that New Realm Brewing here on campus. It's a really special thing to see him come back here and do that and get to work with him on that as well.
So he's also a movie star. There was a movie
Yes.
called Brewmaster that debuted at South by Southwest in Austin, Texas. Featured, I think, three people that were in the brewing
That's right.
industry. One of them was him. And there's a scene I really enjoy where he's really exasperated with what hard work it was to create his business plan because it was the business plan for my class. And so
Right.
if I'm frustrating a student and forcing them to challenge their abilities, I'm doing a good job.
No, absolutely. And I think it's important for students to have a really clear and reasonable expectation of what it's going to be like in the real world.
Right.
And I think if we weren't doing that, then we would be doing them a disservice. I have a really big project in my class that I get a lot of feedback about. And it is essentially where they have to price out and design and build out what would be their craft brewery. So I give them an actual budget. I give them a loan that they have to pay back, and I give them an interest rate. And then they literally have to go through and pick a location, estimate how many renovations are going to have to go into that location, and then build out their brewery. And then I make them take out their finances to break even. And so it kind of builds off of the business plan
Right,
project
right,
that,
right.
that you have in your class. That's excellent. And it's really amazing because one of the pieces of feedback I always get about mid-semester as kids are really starting to crank on that project is, I figured out I really don't want to use my own life savings to open my brewery. And that's a good realization, and I think is important. But then by the end of the semester, I get a lot of thank yous about the project,
Mm,
actually, because it really allows him to go out into that world with a really clear vision about this is what it's actually going to take from a financial standpoint, but also a little bit what you're talking about with Drew from a work standpoint.
right.
So I make them reach out to the city where they're going to build this brewery and ask about permitting and licensing and fees and water usage. And they're shocked oftentimes about how some cities literally have a whole section of their website dedicated to, so you want to open a craft brewery and here's the forms you fill out, and they want people to open that. And then other cities that they reach out to and they get hung up on by city representatives, right? And so they're giving them this sort of like, we don't want you here. Well, that's important for them to understand and to know as they enter into that workforce. And so I think that, and that's maybe the beauty of the online class in a way, is that having them be able to do that type of project parallel to the content, which the content in my class, it's facilities management for brewers. It's very technical in nature. This is a stainless steel tank. This is how you properly clean it. This is how you sanitize it. This is what the proper pump pressure should be for this pump if you're pumping over at this temperature. It's very technical in terms of running a brewery and designing it, but being able to have that project run parallel with them on that class, it also takes them to that next step, which is, hey, I want to actually own my own brewery. And that's typically what we hear from a lot of the students that come into the program.
Yeah, one of the biggest pluses to that program, I think, is you can live anywhere and take
right.
it. You do not have to come to campus. And so we've had people not only from across the United States, but in other countries, across oceans, taking that program and learning how to be a craft brewer.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to work with those students because they bring very different perspectives to the classroom. And one of the things that I do in my class is throughout the semester, I basically set up a live Zoom call on a Friday night. Everybody brings a beer or two, and as a class, we talk about the project,
Yeah.
questions, but also just to get to know each other. So bridging that gap of a totally remote online class. And the students love it, and it's amazing where we had somebody joining us, from the other side of the planet, and so we were doing it at like 7 o'clock at night, and it was 4 o'clock in the morning or
Were they
whatever
drinking
their
a beer
time,
at
and
4 in the
they
morning?
did one of their own.
That's impressive.
They got an A+ on that day for bonus points, but it was really neat to hear them talk about, well, in my country, where I want to do my brewery, and his project was based in a foreign country. Here are the rules and regulations. Here's what I have to do to get permitting. Here's the issue with water, with gas, with heating, and all of these things. Completely different, completely foreign conversation, but it allowed the stateside students to really start to think about, okay, so here's how it works there. This is how it's going to work here. But maybe that's a creative solution to a problem I'm having with water uses, for example, or how many dissolved solids I can put to drain, because the county is really worried about that. So it's really neat to have that cross-pollination, I think.
All in all, I feel like the brewing program is a showcase program for the university. There's now a master's degree that students can earn. And it's just been something where I think faculty have had the opportunity to have a big impact on individuals and individual communities through supporting these entrepreneurial efforts.
I hope so. I think that's very kind of you to say that. And you're obviously a part of that, right, Dave? So you deserve a lot of credit for that as well. I think, I hope so. I think it is. And, it's great to hear from students, because you get feedback from students at the end of the semester. You get the, student evaluations of teaching, bayonet sheets, as they're commonly referred to by some faculty. But what's really rewarding for me are the students that reach out to you 3 years later, 5 years later, to say, hey, Dr. Martin, and I love this comment, right? I kind of gave you a bad review or an evaluation, and I'm calling to apologize, because now that project that I hated and you made me do, I went back to that project because I got an offer to open a brewery or whatever, and it became invaluable for me in this process. And so I wish we could go back and, timestamp those evaluations,
Revise and
maybe change. Right. Yeah, exactly. But it is rewarding when you get that phone call or that email or that text or whatever that is, and hear them say that, yeah, that class or that project or that interaction or the program as a whole had a positive influence on them and a positive impact on their lives. And it makes all the hard work worth it. And I will say that, and Dave, I don't know if you agree with this or not, that developing this program, but also developing classes for online is a lot of work.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's
On the
tremendous investment of time up front.
If you want it to be a high quality product, right? Part of the strength of the online classes is the flexibility and convenience. And so a lot of the maybe issues that you deal with in a more standard in-person class of a student missing a quiz because they were sick, or a student missing a quiz because they weren't sick and they still want to be able to make it up, and you're getting into all of these kind of the weeds on all of these things. The convenience of the online format allows students flexibility to deal with those things. And so, for example, in my class, the midterm exam or assignment that they have a whole week to complete that, right, over time. So if they are a little sick, on one day, or they have their kids are sick, or something's going on at work, well, it's not a deal breaker for them because they have a full 7 days to kind of get that assignment done. If you have a midterm exam and it's at noon on a Thursday in class in person, well, you're either there or not as a student, right? But it still has to be made up if they're not there. And we all know where that conversation goes potentially sometimes with students. So that convenience factor, I think, and flexibility is something that I think is a real strength of the online courses. And when I work, I have other faculty that are talking about developing online classes. And that's one thing I always try to remind them is understand that online education flexibility is, I think, a key component of that. Don't design a course that eliminates that flexibility. I think good teaching is very personal. I think that people that try to not allow their personality and who they are come through in their teaching tend to struggle. I mean, that's what I've observed, and that teaching is very personal. And so by having Auburn Online and the facilities and expertise that they have now, you're able to bring your personality into the course, and that's going to impact the design. There might be faculty that are more comfortable literally scripting out every
Right.
single thing
Right.
because that's their personality. But there might be faculty, and I think you and I probably fall in that bucket of, hey, just give me a couple of bullet points and some technology, and I'm gonna make this work.
Right.
Right. So that type of flexibility in the initial course design itself, I think, is incredibly valuable, and it's important, I think, for faculty to stay true to who they are, whether they're teaching in person, if it's online, asynchronous, synchronous, a piggyback course, whatever you want to call it. You still have to be who you are when you're teaching that class and be authentic to that.
What do you think the future holds for the brewing program?
You know, that's a great question. I
Because
think
UC Davis, who's probably the premier
Yeah.
brewing educating university, has just now launched an online
they have.
program.
They have. Yeah. I'll be interested to see kind of what happens with the program. Obviously, we have a dedicated director now. We didn't really have that before.
No.
We were all kind of the director in a way. So we have a dedicated director, and we also have the master's program. And so I think that is going to help with the long-term sustainment. To be honest, when you look at the trends, especially in alcohol consumption,
Yeah.
especially in the younger people, it's down, right? And it's down across the board
Right.
in terms of overall consumption. And then you have hard seltzers and those things, ciders, and that are much lighter in alcohol content, and that tends to be where younger people are going right now. So I think there's some interesting trends that we need to see if they continue kind of into adulthood with younger consumers and populations that are going to drive overall sales of wine, liquor, spirits, and beer as well. I think craft brewing as a whole is still well positioned to have success. I think people like the authenticity of craft brewing. I think the product is better. I'm biased there,
Yeah,
right? And
agree.
listen, there's nothing wrong with a Budweiser or a Bud Light at the tailgate every once in a while, and I certainly do that too.
I wouldn't waste the calories.
But typically when people start to drink really good craft beer, they kind of tend to go that way and stay that way, right? So we'll see what happens, but I think that the strength of the brewing program too is that we also are very authentic, and we're trying to remain true to that. And so I think it's going to be continue to be popular with students.
I hope so. And one of the things we haven't talked about is a good number of the students, up to 50% in any given year, are veterans.
Yes.
And so that's always been a source of pride for me, that we're helping veterans launch businesses.
Yeah, I think that is something that we realized early on was not only just an area of opportunity with GI funding, the GI Bill, but also it allowed us to give back at a different level.
Right,
And we talked
right.
about having a positive impact on people's lives. The fact that they were also veterans just is another additional layer to that I took a lot of pride in and continue to as well. And I think that's been a strength of our program, of working with veterans who may or may not come to the table with unique needs around their personal lives.
Right.
And again, online flexibility and convenience really allows us to address those ahead of time.
Well, we're out of time. I've really enjoyed talking about the brewing program with you. It's been a fun journey across over a decade now, and hopefully the future is bright.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and I've really enjoyed talking about it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
My name is Asim Ali. I was the founding director of Auburn Online, and currently I serve as the executive director of the Biggio Center, which includes Auburn Online. As I was meeting with faculty, my father was a faculty member for 45 years, and working at Auburn for many years, interacting with a lot of faculty. It's pretty evident that, as academia evolves, as the expectations of what students want and what employers want evolves, more and more is expected of faculty. We ask them to innovate, and we ask them to recreate continuously. And sometimes we don't really provide the supports as an organization that we should, in order to make sure that faculty are able to reach the best outcomes that are possible. And when it came to online learning or learning innovation, the idea was, how do we really support faculty so that they can bring their expertise, but we're able to meet them where they are and provide them with the support and the resources to really imagine outside of the bounds of what's possible in terms of learning, in terms of creating learning experiences. And that was really the spirit and the idea behind Auburn Online. I felt that if we could hire folks like learning experience designers, instructional designers, videographers, creative designers, accessibility experts, the faculty would feel even more comfortable and even maybe even energized to bring their ideas, bring their expertise to us and essentially say, what if somebody could learn the following thing? And then we would say, yeah, how about if you thought about it this way? What about an immersive, virtual reality experience? Or what about if we created some kind of a way for them to practice that or engage with that in a virtual environment? And that was the impetus around the idea of supporting that type of learning and that type of pedagogical innovation. And it's really, the fruits of our labor are there in terms of what we see in the results. I think the faculty that work with us certainly give us feedback that they have incredible experiences in terms of working with the talented folks in Auburn Online. They share with us how they're able to accomplish things that they didn't know were possible in terms of an online or virtual, even face-to-face or hybrid, as we see that grow, that type of environment. And so that gives us the confidence to continuously try to evolve from that. It's what you do is important, but how you do it is even more important. And to me, being able to found Auburn Online and establish that team has been a privilege of a lifetime. The idea of being able to create a work culture that I want to see, that I want to get excited about and be at, which encourages people to experiment and try things, which encourages creative out of bounds thinking, which encourages taking risks, but then trying to see what works and what is needed out there. That work culture of holding each other accountable for the best possible outcomes, that culture that exists is really, I think, the driving success of a unit like Auburn Online. It allows us to take risks. It allows us to say, you know what, let's push the bounds on this other thing. Let's also try this other thing that is really important in this area as well. And we're able to do that because of how people work with each other, how much they trust working with each other, and how they support working with each other. That honestly allows you to do anything.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Tiger Bytes. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and gained some valuable insights. Please like, subscribe, and share this podcast with your friends and colleagues. You can find us on all major platforms and keep learning, keep growing, and we'll see you next time on Tiger Bytes.